Let me set the stage. I, 29 female, have been with my fiance, James, 34 male, for 2 years. And up until last weekend, I thought he was the love of my life. James is charming, thoughtful, and has always seemed like the perfect partner. He swept me off my feet early in our relationship, and when he proposed 6 months ago, I was over the moon. But there was always one shadow hanging over our relationship. James' past marriage and his estranged relationship with his daughter, Lila, 17 female. From the very beginning, James made it clear that he didn't want to talk too much about it. He told me that his ex-wife had cheated on him years ago, breaking his heart and destroying his trust. According to him, the betrayal was so severe that even his own daughter had turned against him, choosing to side with her mother and her affair partner during the divorce. "She's toxic, just like her mom," James would say whenever the topic came up. "It's better for everyone if we keep our distance." He painted a picture of a heartbroken father who had been abandoned by the people he loved most. And while I sympathized with his pain, something about the story never sat right with me. Still, I trusted him. We were planning our future together, and I told myself it wasn't my place to push him to relive old wounds. Whenever I asked general questions about Lila, like whether he hoped to reconcile with her someday, he'd grow tense, frustrated, and change the subject. I assumed he was just deeply hurt and trying to protect himself from further pain. Fast forward to our engagement party, which we hosted at a charming venue in the countryside. It was a beautiful evening, and everything was going perfectly. My parents were there, beaming with pride, and James's friends and family were mingling and enjoying themselves. I was on cloud 9, thinking about how lucky I was to have found someone so wonderful. About an hour into the event, while I was chatting with some of my bridesmaids near the buffet, I noticed a young woman walking into the venue. She had long dark hair, piercing eyes, and a quiet confidence that immediately caught my attention. At first, I thought she was a distant relative of James's that I hadn't met yet, but as she moved further into the room, I realized something was off. James froze when he saw her. His entire demeanor changed in an instant. Gone was the relaxed, charming man I knew. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Before I could even process what was happening, the woman walked straight up to me, ignoring everyone else in the room. "I'm Lila, your fiance's daughter," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You deserve to know the truth about the man you're about to marry." My heart dropped. This was James's daughter, the one he'd described as manipulative and brainwashed. She reached into her bag and handed me an envelope. "Read this," she said quietly, glancing at James with a look of disgust. "It'll explain everything. Then you can decide if you still want to marry this guy." Before I could say anything, James was at my side, his face red with anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" he shouted at Lila, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of every guest in the room. "Get out, now!" Lila didn't flinch. "I don't want you to ruin another woman's life like you ruined my mother's. She has a right to know what monster she's marrying." James grabbed her arm and started dragging her toward the door, yelling for security to escort her out. The room was dead silent, all eyes on the unfolding drama. The guards escorted her out, and as soon as the door closed, James turned to me, his face pale and panicked. "Don't read it," he said, his voice trembling. "She's just trying to ruin this for us. She's been brainwashed by her mother. It's all lies." But his panic only made me more suspicious. My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. The first page was unmistakable. A court document filed restraining order, filed against James, last name. My heart began to race as I started reading the details aloud. The document outlined a completely different version of events than the one James had been telling me. According to the court filings, James had been the one who cheated during his marriage, not just once, but multiple times. The document detailed several affairs, including one with a co-worker and another with a close family friend. When his ex-wife discovered his infidelity, she filed for divorce, but James didn't take it well. The court records described how he began stalking her after the separation, showing up uninvited to her home, her workplace, and even Lila's school. He sent her threatening emails and made harassing phone calls, demanding that she take him back. The situation escalated to the point where his ex-wife had to call the police multiple times. One particularly chilling incident described in the document involved James attempting to break into his ex-wife's house late at night while she and Lila were inside. This was the final straw that led her to file for a restraining order. Even more disturbing was the impact on Lila. The document mentioned that she had witnessed many of James's outbursts and had chosen to live with her mother because she felt unsafe around him. It also stated that James was prohibited from contacting either his ex-wife or Lila until Lila turned 18. As I read, my voice broke and tears streamed down my face. The room was completely silent except for James's frantic attempts to interrupt me. "It's not true," he shouted, his voice desperate. "She's lying. They're all lying." But his protest sounded hollow. When I finished reading, I looked up to see the horrified expressions on our friends and family. James's mother, who had been sitting near the front, buried her face in her hands and muttered, "Oh, James, not again." I turned to James, my voice shaking. "Is any of this true?" He couldn't even look me in the eye. Instead, he stammered something about how his ex-wife was vindictive and had set him up because she couldn't handle the divorce. But his excuse didn't make sense. If it was all a lie, why hadn't he told me about the restraining order? Why had he hidden so much of his past? "I can't do this," I said, taking off my engagement ring and placing it on the table. "The engagement is off." James tried to follow me as I walked out, but several of my friends blocked him, telling him to back off. Since that night, he's been blowing up my phone with texts and calls, begging for another chance. He's accused me of humiliating him in front of everyone and ruining his reputation. His mother has also reached out, saying that while James has made mistakes, he's a good man at heart and deserves forgiveness. Lila, on the other hand, sent me a message on social media, apologizing for causing a scene, but saying she couldn't stand by and watch her father manipulate another woman the way he manipulated her mother. She said she hoped I'd make the right choice. Now I'm left questioning everything. Was I wrong to read the document aloud? Did I overreact by ending the engagement so suddenly? Or did I have every right to protect myself from a man who clearly hasn't changed? So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole? OP didn't humiliate him. He humiliated himself by lying to OP and trying to manipulate the narrative. If it weren't for his daughter, who knows when or if OP would have discovered the truth? The fact that he tried to snatch the document from OP and immediately went into damage control says everything about his guilt. OP dodged a massive bullet here, thanks to Lila, who sounds like a great girl because she cares for others, even people she's not close to. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. And as someone who works in family law, let me tell you, court orders like restraining orders aren't handed out lightly. The behavior described in that document is serious. Stalking, harassment, attempted break-ins, and his excuse that his ex set him up? Laughable. Courts require evidence to grant restraining orders, and the fact that it was granted in the first place speaks volumes. The most telling part of this story is that his own daughter felt compelled to intervene. She didn't do this to hurt you. She did it to warn you. Please don't let anyone convince you to give this man another chance. Oh my God, not the a-hole at all. James has been gaslighting you this entire time. He completely flipped the narrative and painted himself as the victim when he was the villain all along. Honestly, good for Lila for stepping in. She sounds like she's been through hell with this man, and the fact that she had the courage to show up at your engagement party just to protect you says everything about her character. Don't let his family guilt you into taking him back. They're just enabling his toxic behavior. Not only are you not the a-hole, but you're also a freaking hero for handling this the way you did. You could have kept quiet and dealt with it privately, but you chose to read that document aloud and hold him accountable in front of everyone. I can't imagine how humiliating that must have been for him, but honestly, he earned every ounce of it. Imagine if you had married him without knowing any of this. You'd be trapped with a man who clearly has no issue lying and manipulating. Good riddance to him, and kudos to Lila for having your back. Stay strong. You've got this. So, about a month ago, during quarantine, I decided, out of sheer boredom, to play the European lottery. Believe it or not, for the first time in my life, I had won something. And not just a little win, but the whole jackpot was mine. I was literally shaking at first and just wanted to scream and tell everyone. But I decided to just calm down and plan out what I'm going to do with it. The money I received is immense. Like, I never have to work a day in my life. Neither will my children if I decide to have them. And I still had enough left over to give to my brother and parents, so they, if they act responsibly, will never have to worry about money again either. On to the point. The females on my mother's side of the family have all pretty much crappy genetics when it comes to hair. We're all mostly losing hair and have visible bald spots on our heads. Mine started at the age of 15, which was a huge blow to my self-confidence. It's not horrendous, but it is something that I've always said I'd fix for all of us if I had the chance. And now I intend to keep my word and said anyone who wants hair implants is welcome to join, and I am paying for everything. It ended up being only me, my mom, and my aunt, mother's sister. As I am arranging all of this, I get a call from my mom. Apparently, my cousin, mother's brother's daughter, would like to have me pay for her fertility treatment instead of the hair transplant, which was never even considered for because, luckily, she has really nice hair. I was kind of weirded out by the request, especially since she didn't reach out to me in person. Her mom called my mom, and because she has some issue with me and avoids me at all times. But now, all of a sudden, I'm supposed to be friendly and pay for her treatments. I flat out refused, mainly because we have a history where she really wasn't nice to me, and she used to pick on me, and partly because, well, it's my money, and I don't want to spend it on someone who wasn't my friend, and kind of always hated me a little. Another thing is, well, I've not quite looked it up, but I think these treatments are far more expensive than just a hair transplant, and I think she just saw a nice opportunity to milk me a little with the added pressure from our families. So now my mom and aunt are saying I have enough money to pay for her as well, that I'm an a-hole if I don't, because it's such a life-changing thing to be a mom, and if I don't do it, she can never be a mom, and that they'd rather I spend the money I was going to spend on them, on my cousin. I'm thinking of just getting some hair for myself and thinking duck them all, but would I be the a-hole then? Not the a-hole. All kinds of people come out when someone suddenly has money. Your jerk cousin wants to play nice now that someone can pay for her treatment, but she won't even contact you or your mom herself. She had her mommy contact your mommy. You do not have to spend your money on people who were not there for you when you had nothing. That's not being greedy. It's being realistic. Your real friends were there 2 months ago before you had the cash. Anyone who pops their head up now is just about the money. And unfortunately, anyone new who shows up, you have to be careful about. Are they trying to be your friend because you have money? Or are they just a cool person? Not the a-hole. It's your money, so you choose what to use it on. If she has never been nice to you before the money, it's clear she is now trying to use you for her own benefit. I suggest you keep the money a secret, as it is possible more people like her will try to use you. Not the a-hole. Your money. Spend it however you want. Also, put your foot down now about what you will and won't pay for. When people find out you have money, they'll start to try and take mega advantage of you. People coming out of the woodwork. Friends you haven't talked to in years contacting you. Family members with all sorts of emergencies. Learn how to say no, and learn it quickly. Update. Okay, since a bunch of people are PMing me about the amounts, and some about how a baby is the most important thing, I can tell you my parents, brother, and aunt are the only ones who received money from me. It was because they were always there for me, and I felt loved with them. I got around 80 million euros after tax. Parents, brother, and aunt all received around 5 million individually before tax, which is 25%. So if they want, they can ducking pay for her baby treatments. Nobody wants to ducking pay for it because they say these things can cost up to hundreds of thousands of euros for a single try and not even work the first time. And everyone wants a big house, vacation home, new car, etc. first. I'm the one with the majority of the money still. I was also the worst for not giving everyone in the family an equal share. My mom has 2 sisters and a brother, and I only gave money to one aunt. Because if I had given cousin side of the family the same amount of money, nobody would be upset, and they'd pay for it themselves, with my money, but okay. She and I have had a history where I was really young and thought she was my best friend, and I was really loyal to her, but she accused me of trying to steal her boyfriend and made fun of me behind my back whenever I left the room. She told everyone I was still a virgin at 16, and her and some guys made fun of me, which now I'm kind of proud I wasn't an S. I cut ties with her around that time because I had felt betrayed so many times up to that point. From then on, we've never really got along anymore, and she has never showed any interest in me up until now, when I am suddenly rich. Now I should be a good cousin and pay for her to have a baby, or maybe a few, eh? Well, after reading all of these responses and having some time to think, I've decided to not go ahead with the procedure for anyone but myself. Everyone just seems so entitled, and I feel like I'm a new toy for everyone to use and abuse until I'm not interesting anymore, and have given them all they can get. I am sad and disappointed, but like they say, money can't buy you happiness. But it hurts less when you cry in your mansion. I don't have a mansion, just trying to be funny. A couple of years ago, I married into a large family. My husband has 2 brothers and 6 cousins, boys, who all grew up as one family and literally call each other brothers. We tend to meet up at least once a month. My issue isn't with the boys. It's that 6 of them are married, and there is a weird dynamic within the wives. The main issue is that my husband used to date his cousin's wife's sister before he met me. Weird, I know. They broke up 6 years ago, and even though I didn't even know him when he was in the relationship, it's clear she thinks I have something to do with it. She pretty much doesn't acknowledge him and is very frosty with me, with catty comments thrown in. I'll call this sister-in-law Charlotte. Everyone knows she is like this too, but no one makes a big deal of it, including us. I understand that she has a reason for her behavior, even though sometimes I find it frustrating. The guys generally make light of the situation. Example, there were lots of jokes when I got her for Secret Santa, so it's out in the open that she dislikes me. As I'm the newest wife and also feel like I'm in a somewhat hostile situation, I used to get quite anxious when I was around them. I discussed this with a different sister-in-law, let's call her Miranda, last year. I actually ended up breaking down and crying about how hated I felt when I hadn't actually done anything wrong. Miranda was understanding and basically said she knew Charlotte should get over it and hopefully she would soon. So the most recent thing that happened was that I mentioned to Miranda a group activity we could do with all the wives. It was basically a paid activity and something you can only really go to once. She said it was a great idea, and I said I'd bring it up next time we were together to arrange a date. A couple of weeks later, she messaged the rest of the wives in our WhatsApp group, suggesting this activity and asking for dates we are free. Charlotte throws out a date she can do as her schedule is the most packed, and I say I can't do that date but suggest alternate dates. Without even responding to me, Miranda says as the majority can go on Charlotte's date, we'll go with that date. So they basically planned and went to the event I told them about without me. Bearing in mind everyone else could have gone on several other dates, but that would have meant no Charlotte. I got really upset by this, and my husband basically thinks I'm being unreasonable. I think it's the issue for me. 1, I feel like the least important one of the group anyway. 2, there was no acknowledgement of me when they made their plans, or that I came up with the activity. 3, Miranda knows how Charlotte treats me and how she makes me feel. She doesn't care. I've basically told my husband I won't be meeting up with him separately anymore, without him and the boys, as I don't feel valued, but he thinks that's a really petty move and will lead to issues in the future. I'm also reluctant to bring this up to the wives, as I don't want to make this into a huge awkward thing. It's already bad enough when we meet up having to deal with Charlotte. You aren't being petty, and you don't have to be friends with them. It's okay. You have to be civil at holiday functions, but don't have to see them otherwise. Anyone would have hurt feelings, and your husband is not exactly being supportive of you and your feelings. Your feelings are valid, and you should insulate yourself from future psychological harm. Try to make your own friend group if you don't have one. Maybe take up new hobbies and the like. These people aren't your friends, and clearly don't want to be. I understand that sucks, but you're giving them a lot of power that they don't deserve. No one is obligated to be another person's friend for any reason. Stop trying. You need to sit your husband down and explain to him how important it is that he get on your side. Of course, he is allowed to exercise his own judgment and call you out when you are wrong. But in this case, you are not. It was your idea. You weren't given credit for it, and you were cut out. If he doesn't understand how crappy that is, then you've got more than sister-in-law issues. You should talk to Miranda directly. Tell her exactly how what happened made you feel. She either takes that information and tries to make it up to you, or she proves herself not to be your friend. The last secret I am going to impart. Stop worrying about making people upset. If you are making an honorable effort to be reasonable, find compromises, and avoid cruelty, then duck the people who get upset. It's on them. The key here is being thoughtful and reasonable, which it sounds like you are. At this point, your goal is not peace, because no one cares about your needs. At this point, your goal is boundaries. Again, well thought out, reasonable ones. Unfortunately, you have to start with your husband. He has to have your back. Edit. A couple of things to mention. My husband's brothers, cousins, are his best friends. He has other groups of friends that we see, but there is an obvious difference in the closeness. That's why we meet up with them so much and are all so interlinked. I actually enjoy hanging out with the guys, and we get on great. I also have good friends, though many have moved out of town. But it's true that I need to make an effort to make sure my life is full outside of this group. I don't want to paint my husband in a bad light. I agree that I need to spell this out to him more clearly and provide more context. His response was more that if I act off the back of this and withdraw from the group now, I will feel more isolated and awkward around them and then regret it. I actually think I need some space from these girls so I can feel like myself again, and hopefully he will understand that. The way he handles things is different. Example, he thinks it's Charlotte's loss that she doesn't speak to us, as we are great and she's missing out. Obviously, it affects me more deeply, and I need to communicate that. I'm also taking on board the advice of meeting up with my sister-in-laws one or two at a time. I think this would work really well. And to be honest, my main issues are with Charlotte and Miranda, so hopefully I can make some stronger connections so I don't feel as isolated in the group. I'm a classic people pleaser that wants to be unanimously liked. This is not an appealing quality, and it's refreshing to remember that not everyone will like me, and that's okay. My husband is the youngest of two boys, and my mother-in-law favors his older brother, my brother-in-law. To give an example, my husband does her weekly shopping and drops it off, as she's vulnerable and shielding due to virus. He's done this every week since March. She has shown little appreciation and expects him to do it. Twice my brother-in-law's dropped by with bulk-bought tea bags or bottles of water, and she will go on and on to anyone who will listen about how he goes out of his way for her, his kind heart, he looks after her. There are also many times that my husband and brother-in-law have given her a joint present, and she will hug brother-in-law only, and say, "I know brother-in-law really gave me this." I know she loves my husband, and I think the reason for this is that brother-in-law took on a lot of responsibility when they were young, and my husband was shielded from things. My husband stepped up in the last 10 years or so, and brother-in-law has stepped back due to his own family responsibilities. But my mother-in-law hasn't changed her mindset. So at the weekend, we went to drop shopping off at her house and stopped for a chat. We were talking about my pregnancy, and she turned to me and said, "You do know I will never love any grandchild as much as I love brother-in-law's son, because he is brother-in-law's child and my first grandchild." I have no idea why she said this to me, and maybe it's common for grandparents to favor their first grandchild. But she knows I'm 20 weeks pregnant, and I already had it in the back of my mind that we would be treated differently. My sister-in-law already gets special treatment for being mother of this grandchild, and I thought having a baby may change this. But it looks like it will just highlight the favoritism more. My husband thinks I'm jumping the gun and getting upset before anything has happened. But I feel so down about this unnecessary interaction and having to deal with this once the baby is born. Mother-in-law, thank you for letting me know that you will never love my child as much as you love my nephew. You do understand that since you have promised to teach my child that they are less than, you have guaranteed yourself a very limited place in their life. If and when you can prove to me that you are capable of keeping your prejudicial favoritism to yourself, we can revisit what, if any, relationship you will have with my family. I would have immediately responded with, "Oh, good. I knew my mom would be the favorite and most loved grandmother. I'm glad you see it too. Thanks for ducking out. Every future Christmas with number one grandma is fantastic." And sit back and watch her stroke out while backpedaling. I, 28 female, paint broken, unsalvageable antique and vintage furniture. My brothers, 25, ex-fiance, 32, used to bug me about selling him one of my vanities, and I told him I'd give him a $200 discount on the one she wanted. That was 8 months ago, and I never heard anything back, so I started doing it how I wanted it done just recently. I recently finished my own vanity that has always been mine to keep. I had time between custom orders and for sale pieces to finally finish it after owning it for 3 years. I posted the photo, and my brother comments for me to let him buy it, and I told him it was mine. Well, she comments under our thread. I picked out the color scheme. This piece was supposed to be mine, but it don't surprise me one bit. One more thing gone of mine. Enjoy it. Not only did I point out, hey, this isn't your piece, but I also told her I don't owe her a damn thing. She started messaging me back and forth about how I promised her. I did not, and that it was her vanity. It wasn't. So I sent her the pictures of each to compare, and I told her nothing was hers until it was paid for, and it wasn't. She is no longer with my brother. She treated him like dirt and was cruel to him, and now won't allow him to see their daughter. So she gets absolutely nothing from me, and I blocked her. A few days later, she texts me through what I can only assume is an app, and asks if she can still buy it. She didn't once apologize for commenting that disrespectful crap on my business page. I haven't replied, and I refuse to. Am I the a-hole? She is telling some mutual friends that I stole it from her, when that couldn't be further from the truth. I won it at an auction for $25. I'm going to continue to ignore her, and when I am finished with it, in the style I want to do, I'm going to sell it. Not the a-hole, but please tell us your brother is pursuing his parental rights through the family court system. Not the a-hole. You can't steal what she never owned. I would suggest blocking her and not engaging with her further. You can't argue logic with crazy. Any further interaction won't help the situation. Family has always been everything to me, and my brother Adam, 31 male, is a huge part of that. Growing up, he was my protector and best friend, the kind of brother who made me laugh on my worst days and helped me out of trouble when I needed it most. Whether it was teaching me how to ride a bike or defending me against school bullies, Adam was my rock. So when Adam told me he was getting engaged to Sophia, 29 female, I wanted to be happy for him. I truly did. Sophia, by all appearances, seemed like the perfect match for Adam. She came from an extremely wealthy and influential family, had an impressive career, and exuded grace and sophistication. My parents, particularly my mom, were thrilled, seeing Sophia as not just a partner for Adam, but also a stepping stone to a better social circle and an opportunity for our family to level up. But from the start, something felt off about Sophia. Whenever we interacted, she was polite but distant, almost like she was trying too hard to keep me at arm's length. Her smile never quite reached her eyes, and our conversations always felt shallow and strained. I tried to chalk it up to nerves. Maybe she was just uncomfortable around Adam's family. I didn't want to be the judgmental sibling who ruined things for Adam, so I kept my feelings to myself and decided to focus on supporting him. 2 months ago, my world fell apart. I had recently found out I was pregnant. A surprise, but joyful one. My boyfriend and I were ecstatic, already imagining what our future as parents would look like. Adam was one of the first people I told, and his reaction was everything I hoped it would be. He hugged me tightly and told me how excited he was to be an uncle, promising to spoil the baby rotten. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed indifferent when Adam shared the news with her. "Oh, congratulations," she said, before steering the conversation back to her wedding plans. Then, at just 8 weeks, I miscarried. It was sudden, devastating, and left me feeling completely broken. The sense of loss was overwhelming, like a part of me had been ripped away. My boyfriend tried his best to comfort me, but he was grieving too, and we both struggled to navigate the pain together. Adam, as always, stepped up. He was there for me in every way, bringing me food, running errands, and even just sitting with me in silence when I didn't have the energy to talk. Sophia, however, remained absent. She didn't call, didn't text, nothing. At the time, I told myself it wasn't her responsibility to reach out. After all, she and I weren't that close, and maybe she just didn't know what to say. But looking back, her indifference feels colder than ever. Adam and Sophia's engagement party was scheduled for last weekend. It was a lavish affair, hosted at a high-end venue in the city. My parents couldn't stop gushing about it, praising Sophia's family for their generosity and elegance. I wasn't sure if I had the emotional strength to attend, but when Adam called me personally and said, "I really want you there. It wouldn't feel right without you," I couldn't say no. I arrived at the venue dressed in a simple but elegant navy blue dress, trying to blend in. The space was stunning. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the entire room was filled with floral arrangements and tables laden with gourmet appetizers. Guests mingled in designer outfits, sipping champagne and laughing as if they belonged in a different world entirely. I felt out of place, but pushed those feelings aside for Adam's sake. He greeted me warmly, pulling me into a tight hug. "I'm so glad you came," he said, his smile genuine. For a moment, I forgot about my anxiety and focused on how happy he looked. That's what mattered, right? I tried to keep a low profile, chatting with a few acquaintances and doing my best to stay out of the way. But as I was sipping my champagne near the back of the room, Sophia approached me, her expression unreadable. "Can we talk for a second?" she asked, her tone polite, but her eyes cold. I nodded, following her to a quieter corner of the venue. The noise from the party faded into the background as we stopped near a decorative fountain. Sophia turned to face me, her hands clasped in front of her, her demeanor calm, but her words sharp. "I need to ask you to leave," she said bluntly. I blinked, taken aback. "What? Why?" She sighed, as if she were doing me a favor by explaining. "Look, this is supposed to be a celebration, a happy occasion. Your presence here is, well, it's making people uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable? What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You know," she said, her tone almost condescending, "your situation. People know what happened, and it's bringing down the mood. This night isn't about grief, it's about Adam and me. I've worked so hard to make everything perfect, and I can't have anything overshadowing it." Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. I stared at her, struggling to process what she was saying. "You're asking me to leave because I had a miscarriage?" I finally managed to say. "I'm not trying to be mean," she replied, her voice softening, but her words still cutting. "But this night is about celebrating, not other things. I think it's best if you quietly step out before anyone notices." I felt a wave of humiliation and anger rising in my chest. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, a voice interrupted us. "What the hell are you talking about?" We both turned to see Adam standing a few feet away, his arms crossed and his expression thunderous. Neither of us had noticed him approach, but it was clear he'd overheard everything. "Adam, Sophia began, but he cut her off. "Are you seriously asking my sister to leave?" he demanded, his voice cold and sharp. Sophia flushed. "I wasn't trying to be rude. I just thought—" "You thought what?" Adam snapped, his voice rising. "That my sister, who's been through one of the hardest things imaginable, doesn't deserve to be here? That her presence is somehow ruining your precious party?" "I was just trying to keep the mood light," Sophia said defensively. "This night is about us, and I also thought maybe your sister needs time for herself." "And you think the way to do that is by kicking out my family?" Adam's voice was shaking with anger now. "Do you even hear yourself? If this is how you treat the people I care about, then we have nothing left to talk about." Sophia's eyes widened. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I do," Adam said firmly. "We're done." Sophia's face crumpled, and without another word, she turned and fled the room. Her parents, who had been mingling nearby, quickly followed her out, leaving behind a stunned silence. The aftermath of the engagement party has been chaotic. Sophia's family is furious, accusing me of sabotaging the relationship and turning Adam against her. My parents are upset too, not because they think I was wrong, but because they believe Sophia was a perfect match for Adam. "Do you have any idea what her family could have done for him?" my mom asked during a tense phone call. "You should have just left when she asked." Adam, however, has been unwavering in his support. He's reassured me over and over that I did nothing wrong. "If she couldn't accept you, she never really loved me," he said. "You're my sister. You'll always come first." While his words bring me comfort, I can't help but feel a lingering guilt. I never wanted to come between Adam and Sophia, and I certainly didn't want to cause such a public scene. But at the time, Sophia's actions were cruel and heartless. Well, looks like Sophia showed her true colors, and OP's brother is better off without her. Her complete lack of empathy is appalling. OP went to that party because her brother asked her to, and she did absolutely nothing wrong. OP should not let anyone, especially her parents, guilt her into thinking this is her fault. OP didn't ruin the engagement. Sophia did all that by herself. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. Let's take a moment to appreciate how Adam handled this. He didn't hesitate, didn't make excuses, and stood up for you in a way that shows he truly values family. That's the kind of brother everyone deserves. Sophia's behavior was disgusting, and your brother made the right call by ending things before it was too late. Imagine what a lifetime with someone like her would have been like. Wow, not the a-hole. Sophia's obsession with appearances over actual relationships is a massive red flag. She saw your pain as an inconvenience rather than a tragedy, and that's all anyone needs to know about her character. Your brother dodged a bullet, and you shouldn't feel guilty for a second. You were invited. I'm so sorry for your loss, OP. You've been through so much already, and for Sophia to dismiss your grief like that is heartbreaking. You're absolutely not the a-hole. Your brother made the right decision, and you should be proud of the bond you share. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Your presence didn't ruin the party. Her attitude did. My grandma died recently. She'd been sick for a long time and was not a very nice person even before she got sick. She actually enabled some pretty crappy behavior towards my mom by my grandfather. Died before I was born. But when I was 10, nevertheless, we moved into her house to take care of her, and even after she needed advanced care and needed to be in a home, my mom was very involved in her care. My sister and I both since moved out. I'm 26, she's 22. But my mom still lives in that same house. It's paid off and a nice house in a nice location. But my grandma, because she's just a spiteful person, decided to will the house not to her caretaker daughter of almost 20 years, or even jointly to her 2 grandchildren, but to me, who she openly said was her favorite because she thought I was prettier than my sister. Yikes. My mom wants me to turn the house over to her. I know legally it's my house, but under the circumstances, I do fully believe that my mom deserves that house and is entitled to it. The issue is not greed or me wanting to sell it out from under her. Rather, the issue is that my mom is not actually that good with money. I was actually really surprised to grow up and find out that she didn't have credit card debt. I think she's always just made $100 and spent $99.99 of it, saving only 1 cent for the future. So at this point, she has a modest savings, enough to cover a repair or something, but not enough to actually fund her retirement. She does have a modest pension, and without a mortgage, I firmly believe that's enough. She also has a 35-year-old new boyfriend. My mom is 57, who barely works, and who she is now supporting as well. My mom wants me to deed the house to her, but I was dragging my feet until finally I said that I didn't trust her with it, and I didn't want him taking advantage. I'd be willing not to charge her rent and things, but not deed her the house. My mom was really upset and said it was condescending of me, and we both knew it was her house, really. True. Not the a-hole. Get a lawyer to draw up some kind of legal document for her to live there rent-free, but do not give her a house that she's going to end up giving to her loser boyfriend. Not the a-hole. In my opinion, you've been pretty thoughtful and caring towards your mother. You aren't being spiteful or mean, as you have no intention of taking the house from her. You have her best interest at heart, and I would worry about repairs, etc. if she acts that way with money. I suppose you could always get legal advice about a way to assure her she has a home, but guarantee she has no way to loan money against it. Personally, I think this is a kind thing to do for her. Not the a-hole. The house is legally yours, given by your spiteful grandmother. It doesn't matter that it should have gone to your mother. Sounds like you know your mother's financial situation enough that by not deeding the house over to her, she won't end up homeless in the future. This happened a few years ago, but it's weighed on me for a while, and I thought I would ask here. When my 30 female, now husband, 34 male, and I discussed getting married a few years ago, before the engagement, I told him I really only wanted 2 things. 1, for the proposal to just be us, as in no family, no friends, etc. I wanted it to be special for us, and I have really bad anxiety when the attention is solely on me. Even if it's my family, I can get panic attacks, and it's not a good experience. Plus, since I knew he was so nervous, I thought it might help take the pressure off. And 2, for us to shop for the ring together, so it's something we pick out together. I told him I didn't care if he didn't propose with a ring, or could even propose with a paper ring for all I cared. Well, when he proposed, he did neither of those things. He proposed in front of his parents, with whom he has a strained relationship, and made things incredibly stressful and awkward. And he purchased a ring. I don't look back on my engagement fondly. I had a massive panic attack, and it was an experience I wish to forget. But the ring he chose, oh boy, it is very, very much not my style. It's really ugly, and is not suitable for an engagement ring, nor is it designed to be worn for decades. It's actually a promise ring, and he proudly told me he spent under 50 pounds on the ring. I don't care about the price, although it was a bit of a shocker because we both have mid-high paying careers. It looked like a child's ring you would get for a 14-year-old girl. He laughed about how the jewelry store attendant kept trying to show him different rings and asked him multiple times if he was sure that was the ring your fiancé-to-be would like. I spent months trying to find a wedding band that would go with the engagement ring he bought, but because it's made of different metals than wedding bands, nothing looked right. I even looked into getting a custom ring done, but it would cost over £900 for a custom band that would fit with it, and not a designed one, just a plain band because of the way the ring is shaped. Anyways, about 6 months after the proposal, I ended up finding a stunning ring at an estate auction out of the blue and purchased it for a hell of a deal. This ring is exactly what I wanted, and I ended up purchasing the ring for £250. Its verified appraisal value is £1,800 for the main gemstone alone, and approached him about wearing the ring as my engagement ring. He was receptive and told me if it made me happy, then sure, and that I don't care. If it makes you happy, then I'm happy. But I don't wear the ring anymore because every time we get in a fight, he throws it in my face and is really mean about it, and he complains every time I wear it. I talk to my sisters about it, and they all think I am not the a-hole, but I'm not sure. Did I cross a line? Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You were very clear with your significant other what you wanted in a proposal, as well as a ring. He took neither of those things into consideration. I would look at your relationship as a whole. Does he usually disrespect your feelings or ignore them completely? If so, it might be time to leave. The ring you found at the estate sale sounds lovely, though. Not the a-hole. I think that says a lot about his level of respect for you. You asked for two simple things: some privacy and a ring you'd like and intend to wear for the rest of your life. He was extremely selfish, and then to be angry when you went and got another one when he couldn't even bother to listen to you. He's lucky he isn't marrying me, because I would have been 1, mean, and 2, called it off. Why is it okay to go against your wishes, but when you do something that was part of the initial agreement, he's entitled to feel butthurt? He should be glad you even said yes after what he did. Not the a-hole. The fact that he told you it's okay and then brings it up during fights is very troubling, though. It tells me that he really does not care, but knows you are insecure about it, and thus uses your own insecurities against you when he's mad at you, in an attempt to hurt your feelings and unbalance you so you will lose the fight. It's a gaslighting tactic, and it means that your fiancé is willing to sacrifice your mental well-being as long as it means he can win fights. That's rather disrespectful and problematic, and if I were you, I'd hold off on the wedding until this issue with your relationship can be fixed. That is not how normal, healthy couples fight, and doing this is not acceptable behavior on his part. So, a little backstory before I get started. Prior to this whole situation, me, 23 male, and my cousin, 30 male, had a falling out while staying with my aunt. We were both down on our luck for a while, and she offered a place to sleep. My cousin, we'll call him Lenny, was staying there for about 1.5 years prior to me moving in. After I'd been living there for a month, Lenny caught a break and was finally able to move into his own place. This accomplishment went straight to his head, and he began to look down on me. He said I was irresponsible for staying with his mom, and that I'll never accomplish anything. We didn't speak for a while. Fast forward 3 months, I got into a beautiful apartment with my girlfriend and best friend. I'm doing well money-wise and am very comfortable. Lenny, on the other hand, isn't doing as well as he'd thought. He lost his car, was barely making rent, and was just drowning, to put it short. By this time, I had a good amount of money saved up to put towards a new car, so me, wanting to reconcile with my cousin, offered to sell him the car for $1,000 under value, $800, after he'd explained how desperate his situation was. I told him he could pay me a few $100s at a time if necessary. Fast forward again to present time. It's been 5 months and I've received $400 for my car after constantly badgering him for the money. Since the original agreement, I also paid 2 months of insurance on the car he was driving, so the total cost of the car was now $1,000. So I was still waiting for $600. Recently, I was informed that he seized the motor because he forgot to put an oil cap back on and left the car for dead on a highway where it was towed and is now being sold at auction. He refuses to answer my calls or texts, so I've given up on him paying for the car. I told my parents that I would take him to court for the cost of the vehicle, but some of my family members think that would be cruel because it's so close to Christmas. He also has warrants, so long story short, if he fights the dispute or doesn't have the money for the car, he'll be locked up, most likely for Christmas. I don't want to get my cousin arrested on Christmas, but this was a deal made in August, and I'm currently not as well off as I was and need the money more than ever. I also feel that a 30-year-old man should understand the consequences of his actions and be held accountable. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Let this be a lesson to you. Don't lend any money if you can't afford to lose it. Not the a-hole. As you've rightfully said, a 30-year-old man should take responsibility for his actions, Christmas or not Christmas, and he hasn't paid you back for months. It's ultimately up to you to decide what to do, but morally speaking, you would be more than justified. Not the a-hole. You want the money for your car. Fair enough. He's an a-hole for trying to get out of it. But I don't know if it will hold in court unless you sign something saying he agreed to terms of him buying the car. He could always say you said I only owe $400, and then it's your word against his. Edit. The reason I decided to file so close to Christmas was because he just told me the car was totaled and impounded on the 1st of the month, not because I hate Christmas. I don't have issues handling money. I handle money very well. When I was staying with my aunt, I had a job and made good pay. I was actively looking for an apartment at the time. I moved to a new state and was trying to get on my feet. I've managed on my own pretty well since I was 17. I'm only strapped a little for cash right now because I was let go from that job abruptly, but since got another job and am getting things back on track. Since my car was impounded, instead of retrieving it, Lenny purchased another vehicle, which was the driving force behind me taking this to court. I feel like he never had any intention to pay for the car in full. To all of you nice people offering advice, I will learn from this. Despite the overwhelming amount of people in support of me taking him to court, one comment really resonated with me. So I've decided not to go to court. If he decides to pay me in the future, fine. If not, I'll leave this situation the bigger man. I don't want to drag my aunt that just offered to help me through the mud because of the immaturity of her son. Life will catch up with him eventually. Thank you for everyone's responses. Love this community. I, 27 female, am currently single. I purchased a nice big apartment in a quiet neighborhood a few years ago, and along with it, I also got 3 parking spaces, each for about $25K. This is a lot of money, but at the time, I figured parking was crap and it was about to get worse in terms of availability. That turned out to be true. I have 2 cars and my ex used to have 1, so we used all 3 spaces. Recently, we broke up and I started traveling a lot. I let my baby cousin use one of my cars, so I had 2 free parking spots. I offered them to my only neighbor, which I like. She is engaged but has no children. I rented them both to her for $100, even though realistically, rent should be $700 to $800. I checked, prices are going crazy. One space rents for $300 to $400. The rest of our neighbors are not a favorite choice of mine because honestly, they suck. One of my parking spaces is kinda small, and I have a big BMW which I parked in that spot one night. The next day, they had parked in such a way that I was unable to move without crashing into someone. When I asked them to move their cars and promised to just switch around parking spots so issue doesn't repeat, I got the answer, "You're smart enough to leave your car there. You should be smart enough to get it out. Don't you have a million cars? Go drive something else." I got them towed and they screamed their butts off, so that was fun. Suffice to say, we are not friends with the 4 families involved in this fiasco, which is why my lovely neighbor Sky, that even defended me, got my parking spots. People noticed Sky's cars, and only a few days later they made a building association meeting, something I have not been invited to in a year, and sat me down and let me know that the parking situation is unfair. They said I have to put the parking spots up for the whole building and have a rent auction for who will pay the most. They said they feel I was being unfair as they had kids and Sky didn't. I felt bad and talked it over with Sky. She agreed her and her fiance can manage with one of the bigger parking spaces, which barely fits 2 cars, the second blocking the first. Well, they weren't happy. Apparently, they all wanted this big parking space because it is in the shade, and they could put slides and other contraptions for their kids to play in. I let them know this makes me uncomfortable, as I will be back at home at some points, and I do not want anyone to invest anything. They called me selfish and a W. I got upset and told one of the moms who was on my case about my lip fillers that kids are a choice and that does not make her special. She kept saying no wonder you are single, no wonder you don't have kids. She called me a rich, spoiled brat. No one except Sky speaks to me anymore. Should I just give them the freaking parking spot they want? Am I the a-hole? Hell no. You shouldn't give them a chance to rent any of your spaces. They can't choose who you rent to. You own it. You get to decide. For all they know, you're not renting it. You just told your neighbors they could park there. Duck them. If they come at you with some BS, tell them to call your lawyer. I'd rather buy an old car and park it in my space permanently to give in to these jerks. I'd rather reclassify it as a burial plot and be buried in it than let them have that parking spot ever. They want to make a kid's playground and a car park space? Yeah, nothing dangerous about that plan at all. Good gosh, what ding-dongs. Do they expect to use the rooms in the apartment you paid for and don't currently use as well? You paid for them, and they're yours to use as you see fit, assuming there were no restrictions when you moved in. You want to camp in them? Do it. Give them for free to someone with good karma. Heck yes. Just tell them you're dating Sky. That will blow their socks off. Can't prove otherwise. Not the a-hole.